Visit New York City and you'll never run out of things to do. In all 5 boroughs, there is so much to see and experience. But the last thing you might expect in New York is to ride an aerial tram. These things are for the mountains, not a bustling city with millions of people, right? Let me introduce you to the Roosevelt Island Tram. Since 1976, these cable-hauled capsules have glided over the East River, connecting Manhattan with the residential neighborhood of Roosevelt Island. New York's transit might be famous for its subways, ferries, and busy bus terminals, but whether you're into unique forms of public transportation, or if you just like good skyline views, here's why the Roosevelt Island Tram should be at the top of your to-do list next time you're in the Big Apple. Hey everyone, welcome to a brand new Trains Are Awesome video. I'm Tom, I'm in New York City, and I'm standing in front of what has to be one of the coolest Trader Joe's in the entire country. Well, this Trader Joe's definitely has the longest lines for the checkout of any store I've ever seen in my life, but once you can get past that, you can admire the architecture. The store was built into the Queensboro Bridge, a bridge that connects Manhattan with Queens. But it passes over Roosevelt Island, which is a really small island located in the middle of the East River. How do you get to Roosevelt Island if the bridge doesn't serve it? Well, you could take the subway, and I'm a big fan of the subway, but there's an even better way to get there. You can take the Roosevelt Island Tram. Alright, first we gotta get some definitions out of the way. I know that my fellow Europeans heard the word tram and might have thought, oh nice, trams. I didn't know New York had those. Not that kind of tram. Those are called streetcars in the United States. This is what the Roosevelt Island Tram looks like. Ah, so it's a cable car. Well, yes, but also no. When you say cable car in the US, people will think this. No, the Roosevelt Island Tram is officially classified as an aerial tram. And I'll tell you exactly what that means when we're up in the air, but for now, we've arrived at the station. So there's the tram. It's right above me. And just too late. I saw the group of 200 high schoolers approaching, and we tried to outrun them, but they had the upper hand. We ended up sandwiched in between 2 halves of the group. Let me tell you, preventing these people from cutting in line was a full-time job. In recent years, the tram has received a lot of social media attention, and it does have a downside. It's become an attraction in its own right, including to people who are not as interested in public transportation as we are. The Roosevelt Island Tram is totally worth the hype, and you'll see why if you keep watching this video, but it is becoming overcrowded, and folks seem to forget that this is primarily intended for folks to use for commuting. That's why my advice is this. Definitely come ride it, but come in a small group and be considerate. Anyways, once you climb up the stairs or take the elevator, the line brings you through the fare gates. There are fare machines up here as well. A staff member acts as crowd control, making sure not too many people crowd the platforms.
All the way in, all the way in.
A single ride on the tram costs $2.90, same as the subway. And even better, the gates are equipped with Omni readers, meaning that you can just tap your credit card, your Apple Pay, whatever, and you're good to go. Getting on an aerial tram in the middle of the big city is such a strange feeling. These things are common in mountains and at ski resorts, but they do play a role in the urban transit scene as well, and I am planning to feature a few more systems like this in future videos.
So exciting. Wait for the next one is that door. It's not going in. Step all the way in, please.
By some miracle, we got a window spot. And with a lurch, we begin our short trip across the river to Roosevelt Island. The ride will take about 6 minutes from end to end. The sun is setting, the lights in all the skyscrapers are turning on. It may be packed inside the tram, but I'm already glad I'm here. So we were going to talk about aerial trams. Well, as you may know, there are multiple types of cable cars. In the case of aerial trams, they are permanently fixed to one of the cables. The cable moves, the tram moves. Cable stops, tram stops. The other two cables that you can see just act to stabilize the vehicle. In other parts of the world, there are aerial gondolas. These vehicles can detach from the cable to stop at stations. You can put many aerial gondolas on a cable and keep the cable perpetually moving. Aerial trams, on the other hand, they need to run on a schedule and there can only be one cabin per cable, as is the case here in New York. So let's talk about the schedule. The Roosevelt Island tram runs 7 days a week. Every day it runs from 6 a.m. to 2 a.m., and on Fridays and Saturdays it is extended to 3:30 a.m. On weekdays, during rush hours, the tram operates every 7 minutes. At all other times of the day, the tram will run every 15 minutes. On the weekends, in the very early morning and late at night, the tram runs every 15 minutes. But for most of Saturday and Sunday, from about 7 in the morning to 10 p.m., the tram operates every 7 minutes. Whenever there is service every 15 minutes, only one of the two trams is used. But when there is service every 7 minutes, both trams will be in service at the same time, alternating between stops. The Roosevelt Island tram is operated by the Roosevelt Island Operating Corporation. They oversee a lot of different aspects of life on Roosevelt Island, like the red bus or the vacuum trash collection system that many of the apartment buildings have. The red bus meets the tram at Roosevelt Island Station, and the connection is always timed, which is really convenient. To better understand this, first we need to take a look at the island's history in general. The island was known as Minnehannock by the original inhabitants of the area, the Lenape. When the Dutch colonists arrived, they named it Varkenseiland, literally meaning Pig Island. As it gradually became more and more settled, the island underwent a few more name changes, being called Manning Island and Blackwell Island after the wealthy British families who resided there. Over the course of the 19th century, New York City began building prisons, hospitals, and mental asylums on the island, something that New York apparently likes to do with its islands. The prisons and hospitals were a pretty miserable place to be, but for those who did need to travel on or off Blackwell Island, a boat was pretty much your only dry option. Well, the Queensboro Bridge opened in 1909, connecting Manhattan with Queens. It went over Roosevelt Island, like it still does today, but there was a way to get from the bridge to the island. The bridge was used by streetcars. Yep, the European version of the word tram. In fact, right here you can see the old entrances to the streetcar station on the Manhattan side, which are still preserved. Well, once on the bridge, the streetcars would make a stop in the middle, right above Roosevelt Island. People who got off could then cross a ramp and enter this strange building built next to the bridge. It featured hospital rooms, it had a lobby on the top of the building instead of the bottom, and most importantly, it housed a set of elevators that would bring people down to Blackwell Island, which was renamed in the 1920s to Welfare Island. In 1955, the Welfare Island Bridge opened, connecting to Queens. This was the first time that you could access the island without using the elevator. In fact, the elevators closed. The 50s became the 60s, and a new plan was drawn up to build residential housing on the island. One bridge to Queens would not be enough. There had to be other transportation options. The most obvious solution was a subway, and they did build one. The only problem was that the construction of the IND 63rd Street line took more than 2 decades. The subway finally opened in 1989, and if you'd like to watch a video about it, click on the link above. The residents who had moved to Welfare Island, or actually, it was renamed to Roosevelt Island in 1973, hopefully the island's last rebrand, they needed public transportation to Manhattan sooner. So the idea was born for the Roosevelt Island aerial tram to bridge the gap, if you will. For this short distance, an aerial tram was actually a really good idea. It was quick to build, having opened only 3 years later in 1976. It was also relatively cheap, costing only $6.8 million. That's about $37 million in today's money. When the subway finally did open, it definitely took away some ridership, since it's not only faster, but also gets you to so many more destinations. But the tram was popular enough that it stayed in operation. It is now a permanent part of the New York City transit scene. So maybe you're watching this and you're thinking, I like working in a place with beautiful views. This is my dream job. How do I become an operator? Well, I can't tell you how to become one. This is YouTube, not LinkedIn. but I can tell you what it would be like if you were an operator. When you get hired as an operator for the Roosevelt Island Tram, the first thing you'll go through is training. This takes about 2 days and really just helps you learn the basics, like how to run the tram, how to fix some of the maintenance issues, and how to intervene in case of a medical emergency. On hot days, a lot of people do pass out on the tram, so you need to be able to give first aid. In terms of maintenance, operators need to be able to fix these small bugs that might occur, especially on the Manhattan side. See, on the Roosevelt Island side, there's always a mechanic stationed that can take care of things if necessary. But on the Manhattan side, there is no mechanic, so the operators have to fix things themselves. This can include resetting the variance valve or resetting various emergency stop switches. Parts of the operation of the tram are manual and parts are automatic. The doors are controlled manually, and then the operator has to push a button to start the system. But once it starts, everything goes automatically. Of course, when necessary, the operator can still control things manually, like the speed. For example, when there are high winds, it's better if the tram operates a little bit slower. There are 2 trams, the North and South tram, and since they are on their own cables, they can operate independently of each other. During normal service, when one tram leaves Roosevelt Island, the other will leave Manhattan, and vice versa. But it is possible for them to be traveling in the same direction at the same time. These are not clips I filmed, but they were generously given to me by a viewer to use in this video. Thank you. Okay, I'm not gonna lie, initially I was a little bit disappointed at the lines, but the lines went super fast and we went at exactly the right moment. New York at sunset is beautiful. It's still weird to me to see these vehicles, which I normally only see in a mountain context, right here in the middle of the bustling city. But I highly recommend taking the Roosevelt Island Tram. It is such a cool way to see beautiful views of the city skyline, especially at sunset like we did. It's like you're up on a really high observation deck, except it's moving and it's a lot cheaper. And while for commuters the subway may have numerous advantages, I still think the Roosevelt Island Tram is a piece of New York City public transportation that deserves to be appreciated. If you do plan on visiting it, like I said earlier, make sure you're a considerate tourist. The closest station on the Manhattan side is Lexington and 59th on the NR&W trains, and the closest station on the Roosevelt Island side is Roosevelt Island Station on the F train. It was a short ride, but really fun. I honestly cannot believe I waited so long to do this. This is one of my absolute New York favorites now, and it's one of my family's new New York favorites as well. See you next time. We decided to take the subway back to Manhattan. Thank you so much for watching today. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to Trains Are Awesome, and we'll see you next time.